Hollingshead from the University of Pittsburgh. And so our first speaker will be Jeff Weiss, who is Director of Research Analysis at Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University. And the history of this session is I went to the Metrics of Core session and heard Jeff last year and was like, I want to know more about his survey. And I posted it, and then they made me organize it. So it's Anitha Chennat has experience being on the Career Development Committee with some surveys and some other information on surveys and how to do it. So Jeff's going to tell us his story of how he uses his survey and effectively and show us that. I'm going to go through we've put that little survey, play survey up for people to look at, just to have some data to look at. And I apologize, my plan was for that to be interactive and be able for people to sort of look at the data, for all of us to look at that data together as how to do this kind of analysis stuff. I couldn't figure out the technical difficulties of making that happen. So I'm gonna just run through it. It's, basically that survey is there so that when Anitha tells us what we should, the do's and don'ts, we can pick it apart, because I can promise that it can be picked apart. And so with that, I think that's the plan of where we're going. Assuming that I should be able to get an internet connection somehow on my computer to go through that data, but that's a little if. So with that, let's just hear Jeffrey's story.
Thanks. Hopefully I'll get connected to real live it is.
There's a switch on my screen.
Yeah, I keep checking to make sure we actually have internet because it's pretty wonky. Can you hear me? I don't think this microphone's on. Yes, no? Not really sure what we do to turn it on. I could talk louder.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Let's actually leave it on the stand, I think. All right, let's try this. How's that? Yeah? Oh, there we go. All right, beautiful. As long as that, it's trying to get away. Hang on. Okay, does that work? Yeah, okay, good. This mic's not working, but we're good. I've got this one. Yeah, it's okay. We're okay with the one we have. All right, I'm Jeff Weiss. I'm the Director for Research Core Planning at the Feinberg School of Medicine. I can tell you a little bit about the core satisfaction survey that we've been running for quite a while at Northwestern now. So research at Northwestern, as at many institutions, is very dependent on our core facilities. Our research is supported by about 65 core facilities spread across 2 campuses in Chicago and Evanston, about 12 miles apart. In our last complete fiscal year, we had over $1 billion in sponsored awards, and when we analyze that, hopefully it's not going to keep doing this. Man. Okay. All right. It keeps flickering in and out. I just plugged and unplugged it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see. That might have been impacting it. Okay. So about half of that $1 billion is within grants that have access core facilities in some capacity, some more, some less. If we look at just the users at NU, there are almost 4,000 different users just in that last fiscal year, working on behalf of over 1,000 PIs using the core facility. So it's a very large user base. The course program is vital to research at Northwestern, and it's very important that it meets the needs of our investigators. And our core survey is one of the ways that we make sure that that's the case. The survey started back in 2009 with 14 cores in the medical school. The following year, we expanded that to the entire university. sort of gray numbers under here show you the number of cores that participated. So we had about 50 cores back in 2010. That number has increased gradually over the years. In our most recent survey, which we just did last month, we had 69 facilities that participated in the survey. In 2014, we switched to Qualtrics, and that actually does matter. If you look at the response, the number of responses, which is here in blue, the number of people that responded and the number of cores that they reviewed, those numbers have increased gradually over the course of the survey, so that in the last year we had about 1,500 different people respond to the survey, providing about 3,500 reviews, so 2 or 3 cores reviewed by each person. But the biggest jump was this 40% increase the year that we switched platforms. So the platform that you use and the smoothness that can bring to your survey actually makes a big difference in whether people are willing to participate. So one of the reasons that the survey at Northwestern works really well is that there's one survey. So when I first started doing this, there had to be at least 6 or 8. The Cancer Center sent one, the Office of Research sent one, we sent one, individual core sent one. I'd put out a survey and people would respond, I already answered your survey. I'm thinking, no, you didn't. That was someone else's, and they were all running simultaneously. So we reached out to the primary stakeholders. Most of our core facilities are either within the medical school, where about half of them are located. Rex Chisholm is the Vice Dean for Research, that's who I work for. Or they're in the Office for Research, which is the office that Andy Ott, who most of you know, actually runs, and that oversees the other half of the core facilities as well as all of our institutional needs. And then the Cancer Center, which within the medical school sponsors, I think, 17 or 18 different cores. So these are the 3 big stakeholders. And I reached out to them and I said, if I do this one survey that covers the entire university and meets your needs, will you please stop sending yours to people? And they agreed, and that worked out really well. But it's very important, actually, to the success of the survey. Whoops. So I mentioned the platform that I used. The issue for us is that we have a lot of core facilities. You know, there's 69 facilities in the survey. And in the beginning, one of the complaints we got was that it was just too clunky. You know, too many clicks, too many pages, I didn't know where I was, I had to start over again. And so it was important to get a flow to the survey that actually worked for people and made it easy for them. So the way the survey works now is that you have this sort of introductory part where you provide a bunch of demographics, and I'll actually walk through the survey in a moment. Then you select the cores that you're going to review, and then the system actually loops back through the same set of questions. How did you use the core, the quantitative assessments of the instruments, the services, the staff? It's okay, a lot of crashing going on back there. And then questions about new services and comments. And then when you're done, it goes back to the next core that you selected and cycles you back through the same set of questions. And when you're done with all of your cores, you get that little notice that says, you're almost done, thank you, and tell us about the program. And so it helps to keep people oriented, so I think it really helps in terms of the flow of the survey. Now I'm gonna kind of break the rules here and actually go to a browser window. I think this will work, and I'm actually gonna walk you through, this was the survey that we did this year, just so you can see what the flow is. So we have login options for Northwestern and non-Northwestern users. Okay, and actually it's, that's exactly what I was hoping it was not going to do. All right, our nice security people making sure that we're not doing bad things. I actually logged in earlier hoping it wouldn't do this. But there we go. Okay, so it starts with that demographic section. It asks you what your role is at the university so we can segment the responses. I'm actually not a PI anymore, I'm other faculty. There's options for scholars and that sort of thing. It asks you where you're located. We like to see who responds primarily between our 2 campuses, but we also have hospital affiliates. We have a national lab affiliation, and then there's places for academic and non-academic other institutions. So this is just so we know who is responding to our survey. That's a required question. Then there's a list of centers and institutes for you to pick from. This is actually important. It's not a piece of data that we actually use in our analysis, but by asking people to identify the centers that they belong to or affiliate with, we can come back later and segment the responses based on which centers they belong to. So for example, getting buy-in from the Cancer Center, I had to be able to tell them, I can go into the survey and I can tell you which Cancer Center members use the Cancer Center cores. So when you're doing your CCSG renewal, assuming that they're ever going to fund one of those again, we can actually provide the specific data that you need, even though you're participating in this large overall survey. And so that center segmentation is actually a very helpful thing to have. All right, then you pick your cores. We group them by campus, just make it easier for people to find them. It doesn't actually have any impact on the flow of the survey. I'll pick 2 cores here. All right, and so then we give people the heads up that they're going to be responding about instrument services and staff, and that they'll be given the opportunity to skip sections that don't apply. This is something we added relatively recently. So for a core that doesn't really let people use their instruments but only provide services, I would constantly get these complaints, well, who were the 4 people that gave us 1s on instruments? We don't allow people to use the instruments, and so we created this option for them to skip sections that are not applicable, and that largely got rid of those issues. We asked people a little bit about themselves so that the core will know. Did you use it yourself? Was it someone in your lab that used it? How often do you use the core? We try not to be too quantitative with these things. We try to use phrases that people will will make sense for them. Never, just once, occasionally. Very often, do you think your use of the core will increase or decrease? Let's say it's always going to increase. And then we have 2 questions about whether the data generated by the core was used in a manuscript or grant. So the answer to this question is usually about 50-50, and I think people are pretty honest about that. The next question is, if so, is the core cited or acknowledged? And the answer is always 99%, absolutely, we cited the core. We know that's not true. All right? But that combined with this note below it, really the whole point of this question is to remind people that they're supposed to be citing the cores in their manuscripts and grants. Can you hear me? I'm moving. Yeah, okay. All right, so now you've introduced yourself and you're going to go into that cycle of assessments, right? So did you use instrumentation in this core? If not, I'll skip this section. Let's go through the section for now. It asks 4 questions about the instrumentation. The questions themselves aren't that important. You'll pick your own. We use a Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. We switched probably 6 or 8 years ago. Actually, this does work better. The numerical scores never worked. They were all clumped at one end of the thing. So, let's say that I strongly agree. So the questions are always positive sentiments, right? Instruments that I need are generally available. And then we ask them what they think about the fees, which is something that we do want to know. And again, we use phrases like way too high, tolerable, appropriate, or a bargain. And we really don't want them to be a bargain. We also don't want them to be way too high, right? And I will say about 95% of the responses are either tolerable or appropriate, more or less proportionally the same. So that's pretty good. All right, and then same question, did you use services? If not, we can skip over that. Let's assume that we use services in this core. Same format, there are 4 positive sentiments about the services being provided in the core. And you can answer on a Likert scale, which we eventually convert to a 1 to 5 scale for the quantitation. We ask about the pricing, so let's say that the pricing is tolerable here. And then we move on to staff, and of course, all core have staff, right? So this is not an optional section. There are 3 questions about staff, and everybody answers those. Okay, so you notice at the top, whoops, it's showing the name of the core facility. I probably should put that in a darker, but you can tell, which core you're reviewing here. I meant to mention that earlier. Are there new services or instruments you would like in this core? Is there anything else we should know about this core? This usually works, although I will tell you that we'll get comments about the genomics core in a review of the flow core, so people do occasionally get lost, but mostly it works. So now you're finished with that, and now it's circulated back to a different core facility, and it's going to ask you the same set of questions. I'm not going to answer them again. It's exactly the same set of questions that you're going to answer for each of the cores. I'll say no here, so we'll skip that section. It'll save us 1 click. And then finally, why is it showing me another core? Did we pick 3 by accident? All right, let's see how quickly we can skip this core. I thought I had chosen 2 cores. If not, we'll skip out of here since we've seen most of it. Okay, there we go. So you finish reviewing your cores. It says, fantastic, you're almost done. You've completed your reviews of the individual cores. In this final section, we're going to ask you questions about the cores programs so that they can be helpful to us. So for the most part, that orients people. We have 4 questions at the end that we ask people about the use of the cores. For services that are not available in Northwestern, have you used core facilities at other institutions? Right? So we want to know what we don't have that people are going outside to use, and if so, name the institution, the core, what services you were looking for. Even more informative, for services that are available at Northwestern, have you used core facilities at other institutions? And if you say yes, in this case, we ask not just which cores and services, but why? You know, why didn't you use the existing genomics core? The answer is almost always, it's cheaper somewhere else, but then finally, we ask if there are new cores or services you'd like to see at Northwestern and any other comments. So that's the survey. It's pretty straightforward. It's simple. It's easy to click your way through. In the beginning, when we did this, we had lots of complaints about the format of the survey and how smooth it was. I can tell you that those have largely gone away since we moved to this. Now, just in case we didn't have a Wi-Fi connection, I have this slide, all these screenshots, which I'm going to zip past. Okay. So I can tell you a little bit about the whole process itself now from a 10,000-foot view, and then how we analyze the data very briefly. So the entire survey process is about 2 months. So at the beginning of the year, we start requesting email lists. Most of the people we send this to are from the course management system, people that have used the cores. But just to make sure everybody gets a chance, I put in all the faculty, all the graduate students, any list that I can find, I send them. Well, I figure, what's the harm, right? It takes a while to update the survey announcements that are mostly the same every year. We queue all these up in advance, assemble our distribution lists, and then in the beginning of February, more or less, we release the core. We release the survey, and it's open for about 2 weeks. So we have honed this process, actually. We release on a Monday with a request to take the survey that doesn't tell them when the survey closes, because if they know they have 2 weeks, they're going to delete that and move on, right? That Thursday, we remind them again. We remind them the second week on Monday. So now we tell them, all right, this is the week. It's going to close on a Friday. Please, if you haven't taken the survey, take it again. We remind them again on Thursday. Each message obviously has increasing urgency. Then they get this final reminder on Friday that says the survey is going to close tonight. This seems like a lot of announcements, and you would think this is pestering people. I can tell you, I've graphed this. When I look at the data, there is a surge of responses after every reminder and nothing in between. Right? So you really do, I mean, people may not like it, but it actually gets people to respond to the survey. So the survey closes, and then it takes about 2 weeks to analyze the data. Whoops. That looks something like this. So looking at that 2-week period at the end here, it takes about a day to close the survey and clean the data. So I go in there and I actually do look, and I find the blank responses. I find the ones where the same person reviewed the same cores 3 times. Usually it's the core director. So we take all those duplicates out, so now we have a clean data set to start with. You think I'm kidding. We update the Excel templates. I'll talk about those later. It takes about 2 days to export the data. So Qualtrics has a very sophisticated reporting system that I don't find useful at all. So we actually export the data from Qualtrics and do all our analysis using an Excel template, which anyone can do, honestly. And I'll show you what that looks like. It only takes about a day to compile the overview, meaning that here's how all the cores look. So I create this nice report for the senior administration. But then it takes a solid week to put together the individual core reports. Every core gets a report showing how they did on all of these things. And I think that's really critical to helping the core directors derive value from the survey. So all of our analysis is just in a simple Excel template, and I'll click through it really quickly here. There's all these tabs. There's 2 tabs that we paste data into. So for 69 cores, there's 2 reports. That's 100 and whatever, right? So it's a lot of reports to export, but then it makes it very easy. So I paste in this first set of data about the users. It populates this tab with these nice graphs showing who their users are. I dump the rest of the data into this tab. And then it populates all the rest of the tabs. So there's a graphical and numerical representation of all the questions, including the pricing. There's this graphical representation of the data that shows them how they're doing relative to the rest of the program. I'll come back to this actually in a couple of slides. There's a comment section. And then when we're done, all I do is I export this entire thing to PDF. And voila, having done that 69 times, I now have a set of reports for every one of the core facilities. And so each core gets this nice 5-page report that shows, who their users are, how they use the core, whether they cited the core, numerically, how did they score, and there's all the detail here so they can see the spreads on the responses. And they can see, how people responded to the individual questions. There's this representation, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And then there's the comments section. This one's from our imaging core, which is really fantastic. So you can see most people really had no complaints, but there are often very insightful things in the comments sections. I think sometimes the cores find that more useful than anything. So probably for a core, the most useful thing is this graphical representation that I've referred to a couple of times. So what this shows for the 11 questions, right, which are here, 4 for instrumentation, 4 for services, and 3 for staff, it shows their average score against all the cores, but even easier, each of these black bars shows the average response for one of the core facilities. So this is the spread in responses, so you don't want to be this guy. And then in red is the mean of all the cores, and in blue is your core. So you can tell at a glance how you're doing on each of these metrics, right, relative to the rest of the program, and then whether, you're sort of an outlier, right? So this is our imaging core. This is a flagship core. This is actually a fabulous core, right? So they score very well. They're above average on most things. You can see their staff in particular, one of whom is sitting in the back of the room. There he is, are very popular, right? So this is a fantastic core. You can see that there's one measure that they score lower on, and that stands out right away, and that's instruments that I need are generally available. Well, it's a microscopy core. They only have so many Nikon AXR confocals. They're booked 50 to 60 hours a week. We could put 2 more in there, and they have the same score, right? It's hard to get on those instruments, but it's good for them to know. So at a glance, you can see, here's a place where we're doing great, so you congratulate the staff, give them raises, and here's some place where we might want to give that a little bit more thought. Now, at the senior administration gets a binder that has all of the individual core reports, then it has an overview report. But for me, probably the most valuable feedback I get from this is looking at the comments, not just in the individual cores, although I do read them all, but also the comments about the program. So you get things like AI and deep learning infrastructure needs to be strengthened. That's definitely true. It's a new area. We really don't have a good strength there right now. I want to bring your attention that this particular instrument is in bad space. Okay, that's something we might be able to do something about. I wouldn't have known that otherwise. We actually get a fair number of these. The facility manager is a very humble person, but packed with thorough knowledge. People really love our facility admins. On the other hand, we occasionally get things like this where you'll get nowhere else. I'm writing to formally request, this section was actually a group of people writing to formally request an investigation into the growing influence of person A, who's creating a highly restrictive and disturbing work environment. So we take these comments very seriously. We see maybe 1 or 2 every year. And this went from my office up to the Office for Research, and we'll probably make it higher than that. This is clearly something that needs to be dealt with, but it's good to hear it here, right, so that we can proactively do something to perhaps guide this individual. And then you get things like, I think having a recombinant expression core would be helpful. I picked this one out because we had one. It closed 4 years ago, and people are still asking for this service. And so I keep making this argument, we should resurrect this core. Nobody's listening, but the users still want it, right? So that need has not gone away. So this seems to work pretty well for us. These are our average scores for the last, what do we have here, 8 years. See, they've risen constantly until about 2 years ago. They're now more or less leveled off. But they leveled off in a great place. So remember that Likert scale? Or Likert scale? Yeah, okay. 4 means that they agree with the positive sentiment. 5 means they strongly agree. So leveling off at around 4.5 for the program is really good. I mean, people either agree or strongly agree on all of the measures on average. Obviously, there are people on either tail of the distribution. And so we're quite happy with that. Interestingly, it's different for when you look at the staff versus the instruments and services. People have always loved the staff. It's gone up a little bit, but they've always got very good scores. And while the scores for the instruments and the services were never bad, they have increased pretty obviously, right? from 2018, just over the ensuing 5 years. And so I think that's a testament to some of the things. I know Andy Ott's office has done a lot to help out in getting people the instrumentation they need and things like that. And so the program has gone well. So that's all I have. This is actually a link to this year's survey, or a copy of this year's survey, I should say. You can feel free to go in and take that survey as many times as you want. You can log in with an email address. Copy the survey, use it, don't use it. If you use Qualtrics, I'd be happy to export a copy of the survey and send it to you to use as a basis for your own survey, if that's helpful. That's why I didn't spend time reading the questions. You can go and read them yourself. We're happy to share any of these resources. If the templates are useful, if the survey is useful, if any of this analysis is useful, we're happy to share it. We've spent about, I think it's going on 15 years now, kind of honing the survey so that it works pretty smoothly, and we're more than happy to share that experience. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Jeff?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Justine, you want to probably go to the mic just because the room's so full.
Just a quick question from me. So it's great that you've been able to combine all these surveys for different units. How are you able to reconcile the timing differences in reporting requirements? For example, some of those P30 grants that you support and other units that report, how have you been able to harmonize the reporting periods to where you can collect the data that's meaningful to every entity in the time frame?
You know, excuse me.
Because that's one of the challenges we face. We have folks reporting on an annual calendar period, others fiscal year, others whenever they want to.
The answer, of course, is that we can't do that. So the timing of our survey has to do with our budget year. So, you know, the budget planning starts around March. September 1st is our fiscal year. The core facilities applications for support are due on May 1st, and the results of the user survey are part of their application for support. So the timing is largely tied to those events. It's annual. I mean, the best I can do for anyone is to provide them the most recent survey.
Okay. Yeah, just another real quick thing that I noted. On the publications, when you said, did this core, was the data used in a manuscript? Some manuscripts take like forever, so I'm wondering if you should say will be included in, if you can just add that, because sometimes it takes 2 years to publish, and if you just say, was it used, and they say no, then you've kind of lost.
So
I don't know.
Did you take the survey this year? Because that was one of the comments.
Okay.
I did add that to my list. But that was literally one of the comments.
So this is a great presentation, really great setup you have. I can tell you already I'll be asking for your Qualtrics copy. I have a couple of questions. One is, when you do your, first of all, is this anonymous, or is there an opt-in or opt-out for anonymity?
So it's anonymous in the sense that we would, obviously people are logging in and using their university credentials or their email address, right? So I can go in and look to see who the responses came from. I do not do that for any purpose other than deduplicating the data. So when a core director says, I'd really love to know who gave me that terrible comment, the answer is it's an anonymous survey, and if I break that, people will stop responding. So I've never shared the identity of a respondent.
So that makes a lot of sense, but there's a problem then in terms of demographics, because you might have 20 people from one lab provide responses that are basically the same, because that lab is, has the same experience, and just one person from another lab of a similar size answering. So basically your responses could be skewed by the larger groups that are using.
It could happen, but as long as they're all users, we're interested in their opinion.
Okay. The other thing, when you said asking if they're using outside institutions, are you including commercial services when you ask about outside
Yeah,
use?
I think the question just says, have you gone outside of Northwestern University? But that's a good point. I'd have to look at the wording exactly.
Okay. And I've now forgotten my third question. But again, really great work.
Sure, thank you.
Hi, I agree. It's great work. I'm John from the Salk Institute. I think all cores will say that keeping track of citations and acknowledgements is important for justifying our existences, especially when we're doing like Cancer Center support grant renewals. So I love that you asked the question about, did you generate data? Was it using citations? But you have cores that generally don't generate data, like your get-in core. Do you ask them a similar question? Did you use products from this core that were, in publications? Do you collect those citations and indices?
I think the question just says, did you cite the core in your manuscripts and grants? So I think it's agnostic to how they use the core,
Right.
but if they're reviewing the core,
No, I guess I'm wondering, is your survey customizable? So if people are reviewing get-in,
all right.
does it ask for data or does it ask for service?
No, so it's definitely not customizable. So in the earliest years, we let the cores provide questions that we hand-coded in, and it was completely unworkable.
Okay.
So we intentionally have distilled this down to questions that are applicable to all the core facilities. If people have other comments, they can put them in the comments for the individual core, which they will do. We will, on occasion, if a core needs us to, run a separate survey just for their users, independent of the annual survey. We won't do it during the survey window, for example. But no, it's not perfect, but it's much better having the same questions for every core than trying to customize them.
Okay. And kind of a follow-up. For the segment that asked, did you use external services?
Right.
Do you also ask them, did those services lead to publications, and do you collect that data?
No.
All right.
I just had a question because I'm sure we all have trouble getting people to actually answer the survey, even if answers increase. Do you guys use any specific verbiage or language in your reminders that you think has helped gain answers?
There is a statement that says specifically, this data is very important to your core when it's applying for support every year. And, you really need, if you do or don't like the core, you do need to answer the survey so that we can support those core facilities most effectively. So, I mean, it's the most coercive thing we can do.
Yeah.
It largely seems to work. We also encourage, although we send out these reminders, we encourage our core directors to send out a personalized request to their users, including the link,
Yeah. we do.
asking them to respond for the core's benefit.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Some
you.
do, some don't. Most don't, but some do.
Hey Jeff, you said these are part of an application. How do you see the leadership using these surveys when they're making funding decisions?
So there are a couple of funding mechanisms at Northwestern. Two in particular are the equipment awards that come out of the Office for Research and operating support that the medical school provides, mostly to medical school core facilities. And the response for the core is included for the reviewer to go through. And so there's no quantitative place that the survey plugs into, but it's like anything. If the reviewer is looking at the package and they see that the core is not serving their users' needs very well, they're going to be less inclined to agree to support that core.
So I remembered my third question. By the way, I'm George Grills. I'm from the University of Miami. It's related to what somebody else asked you in terms of how granular are your questions and how core specific can they be. One of the challenges, for example, is if you just ask if they're happy with the services or not, is, for example, you could have a combined bioinformatics and biostats core, and people could love what the biostats services are, but not the bioinformatics, and therefore you're getting an amalgamated response. And yes, you do have the ability of, provide more detailed comments, but I wonder, you really found that it was such an intractable problem to be more granular for core-specific services questions.
It is that intractable. I mean, it's just, the complexity of setting up the survey grows exponentially. You literally can't use the flow that I'm using here if you're going to have core-specific questions. And again, for 3 or 4 years, we did that, and it was just a mess, right? I mean, so now those questions are only applicable to that core. The core directors send you the questions. Some of them are irrelevant or poorly worded. Whatever value it may have generated, what I tell the core directors, and I do get this request a couple times every year, is that, you know, these questions are applicable to the cores in general, and they cover the basis pretty well. I mean, we've revised them over time. If you have specific needs, right, we'll wait for another window of time, and we'll survey your users on your behalf with a core-specific survey, and we've done that.
Okay, that's great. Well, one other question, when I've done these kinds of surveys before, I've found it very useful to use a survey core. And I mean, there's actually an association of survey cores that's about as big as the ABRF. So I'm wondering, I don't know if your institution has a survey core or if you actually designed this with the help of a survey core.
We have an outcomes measurement and survey core. I did not use them. And I did design it myself.
Great, thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Jen from
I should add that my wife is a marketing strategy consultant. She keeps asking, do you want me to read your survey and give you like hints? I'm like, no.
Hi, I have a couple questions about the survey. So I'm from St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and we're working to develop our survey. So kind of about his sampling bias question, how do you ensure that, are you sending targeted emails so members of the core cannot respond to questions about that specific core? Or is that part of the scrubbing process where you're going through and looking at their affiliations?
The only thing I scrub are duplicate responses. So if I see the same respondent 3 times, I scan which cores they reviewed. And if they reviewed the same cores 3 times, I just delete 2 of the responses. I mean, I don't actually look at who provides each of the responses. There could well be core staff. I mean, in most cases, I mean, you know, if there's a core with 9 responses, I can tell you we have thresholds even like below a certain number of responses. We don't even consider the response sort of significant.
Okay.
And once you get above a certain number, you know, our imaging core gets 250 responses, right? So.
Okay, and can we email you for the Qualtrics survey, like for a link of that? And would you be willing to provide the Excel template?
Yeah, no,
Okay, cool.
you're welcome to all this stuff.
And then, do you do this by yourself, or do you have a team that helps?
It's just me.
Okay. And then have you come up with a method of summarizing the comments for senior leadership?
Yeah, I didn't show that here, but so this is the tedious part. Andy Ott and I actually go through all of the comments, and I bin them by service, right? Genomics, metabolomics, lipidomics, and I count how many there are. I mean, obviously I read all the comments looking for specific things. And then the only thing I really provide the senior administration is, you know, here are the 2 or 3 things where there were a significant number of requests for something specific. You know, so like for a couple of years, there were a lot of requests for FibSem. I mean, there were 6 or 8 of these, so okay, that was significant, right? I will tell you at this point, mostly that doesn't happen. I mean, there's always 15 complaints about the genomics score. It's a $4 million core. It's got hundreds and hundreds of users, and so it's the kind of thing people like to complain about. And beyond that, it's rare to see more than 6 or 7, but it is useful. We'll occasionally see half a dozen, like, for example, lipidomics, for example, seems to be in need right now. So, you know, all we do is quantitate how many in a service area and think about whether that's something we might need to attend to.
I'm just going to say, can you wake your computer up because the projector's going to come off on the IT.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
Come back to me. Uh-huh. Well, okay. Well, we'll wait and see. Oh.
I'm Jeff from Ohio State University. I love this, and I think my administrators will like it, and so I'm going to bring it to them. What I'm worried about is if they have questions like, we would like to add this question or this question. Do you have any questions that you think should be avoided other than the core specific ones that you've tried maybe and they just weren't as helpful? Or
I can't say that I have any specific questions that I've avoided. We have tried to phrase the questions so that the services questions are really applicable to all the service scores. and the instrument questions are applicable to all the instrument cores. There's always more you could ask, right? Because people have all different kinds of instrumentation. But saying things like, you know, is the instrumentation generally available? Is training generally available? Like that kind of matters to everyone. And we try not to change the questions very often just because we like to look at trends over time. I think we've only, in the last 10 or 12 years, we've only revised the questions once or twice. I'm sorry to say that the projector may have.
No, he's back.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks. No, we're done. But I think the projector went to sleep. I'm done. Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be good. So this is going to be pretty basic because, like I said, I actually wanted this to learn, and then they put me in charge. So this is the distributions. You can see where I did some previews, and Anitha did some previews, and then she sent it to some colleagues who did some stuff, and then here we are at the meeting, and we got a few responses. But it was pretty, I mean, all we just had the QR code on the tables and wasn't very aggressive trying to get responses. So we had all of, 33 responses out of, what are we, 900 people? So there's that. And then I just quickly, wanted to look at some of the basically ways to visualize it, like I put this one a bar chart, and it just felt like I couldn't really, like it was such a difference. I felt like this, a pie chart was sort of telling me more about, so most people have done some kind of survey. And then the question went to so people who had done who said yes to that were asked why, which of course mostly it was this, what we're talking about, general customer satisfaction, but there were a couple for looking at new technologies or something, and then the others were all combination answers, like when they put in their text it was because because it's both 1 and 2, or all of them. And then the people who said no were asked if they would be interested in doing doing surveys in the future, and there were a lot of maybes there, and I'm not sure. So then I asked those why did you not want to do why do you not want to do surveys, thinking they were the people who hadn't done them and were kind of leaning towards not doing them. But of course, a lot of those answers were people who had said maybe, and they were like, well, I'm not actually thinking, I don't want to do it. So this one there's only 9 answers here. I did try, I don't think I left it in here because it was pretty useless. I did try looking at a word cloud for that, and the big words were survey and core, and I'm like, well, that's really not useful. And that's the same thing I found with another survey where I did a free text entry for another topic. I did it was on bioinformatics, and the big word was data. I'm like, yeah, duh. So word clouds sort of in theory seem like they should work, but somehow they really don't. And then so I mean, this one, how did you gather your distribution list? It's, the word cloud sort of gives you an idea. I mean, user lists in iLab, if you look through it, it is mostly about getting an export from your iLab or some other kind of general link. But that one I put in because actually someone who I was talking about with this was she wanted to, she had to work really hard to gather a list of people. She didn't have access to, I mean, she's a kind of a central support person, but not highly supported central support, if that, what that means. And so she didn't have access to the general institutional list of everybody, and so trying to glean and collect emails and everything, and how do you get to the people who actually aren't even using your cores? You can get your user list from all your cores, but how do you get at those people that Jeff was asking? Well, have you used outside services? Because those are people we want to talk to. And response rate generally less than 20%. That's kind of, and that's sort of what I saw in some of the stuff Anitha and I were going over on metrics and stuff. It's 20% on a response rate is really good. And I was like, that's really sad.
Although going by my own behavior, I'm sure it is really good because I don't do them. And then did your latest survey lead to actionable results? It's like either yes, and we made changes, or no, it didn't really indicate anything. And one was honest and said we didn't ever finish the analysis. But I mean, you know, so that was kind of interesting. And you know, there's just, and then these slide bars I thought were a good idea, but then when I came to like, how do I look at this and like, how do I visually understand what I'm learning from this? There wasn't a really good way to look at it, you know, like, so I think this one was the best. These sort of like, whatever these are, you know, speed gauges, like most of them are average except for, I'll make that go away, except for response rate. Right, response rate is the one that's above, that's 7 points. So 0 was this is not challenging, and 10 was this is really challenging. So with an average around 5 for most of them, it's kind of like, okay, most people are finding that fairly average, but response rate was poor. So then you know, I tried this looking at bar charts for each question with each answer, and it's very colorful and pretty, but it's not really, doesn't really help you kind of summarize and think about that. And then what kind of support do you get? I did try word cloud again there, again and again, you know, like I think a lot of the word cloud issue is I didn't have that many answers, right? So like they're not even putting that many words together, so of course it's gonna be kind of like the, but you know, Qualtrics and, so it's sort of useful, but I think it might be much more useful to read through the comments on that. And then asking for feedback on content, you know, content or design. People were not like, there were things that were a single answer that people were like, I want to select more than one of these things. So, you know, why are you limiting me? Somebody said, it was not engaging and I had a hard time finishing it. So, you know, which is fair. So I think that, you know, so this was just sort of like a quick little exercise of we're gonna do this little survey and have some data to look at. And as you'll hear in a moment, there's a lot of things wrong with this survey because I don't know what I'm doing as I designed this. I mean, I had fun with the form logic and everything. But I think that, you know, we would like as we go forward with the rest of the day and we have like some conversation and discussion, feel free to tear these apart specifically, like as we're looking at the do's and don'ts that are recommended, because that's kind of what it's here for. It's like to be the straw man to like say, well, that's what we probably didn't want to do. Okay, so that's the overview of where we went with that survey that, you know, was mildly informative. So we'll switch over and take it from there. I knew I was going to be that quick, though. Oh, there he is. Yeah. You going to put it on there, or are you going to? No, he's got it. Okay. I got it in my head.
Yeah, we just did this with the survey that we put together. So I'll just move on to the, I think as Debbie said, surveys, yeah, may be fun to put together, but are they always effective? So I just wanted to go over some very standard design questions that you should probably ask yourself as you prepare to get your audience involved, customers involved, engage your customer. So what are your goals? The intent is very important. What are your goals? Does the customer even know what you're trying to ask for? Is it clear? Is it to improve services? Is it to improve or expand something? I think the idea of doing a survey that's all comprehensive may be too long. You might want to target what you're trying to get at. And I think that's important to think about depending on how often you're trying to survey your people. The other one is identifying who your customer is. Your stakeholders, as in Jeff's survey, it is the people in the core. responding to some of these things, anybody who's a customer, but there could be other people who are a lab staff member, and then when you are designing a survey for a customer who's here for the first time or somebody who's repeatedly come to your core, their view on how you're responding to their needs, their requests could be different. So I think what I'm trying to say is enlarge that view of what the world is for the survey. Of course, clarity, extremely important to use clear language, and as all scientists want to be, they want to be brief to the point, so make sure that they have that ability to give you a brief response to your surveys. Accessibility, I think that's important. I think that your customer is wide and range, and I think it's important to remember that your survey needs to reach everybody who's important to you. Just a few more points here. So I think a survey is best if you can get some input prior to doing your survey. Bring in your most vocal voice. I'm sure there are people who come and tell you they complain, or they send you an email. Make them your allies. Get those voices in. They are the ones who are going to tell you what you want to hear, and as you hear more from them, you'll hear others also repeat the thing. So find reliable allies. I firmly believe in pre-testing the survey. You could send the survey out to a smaller group of people and see what you get back. That's your open discussion group that you can have. And make sure that you listen to them. As much as you want information from them, point is that you have to listen to them. That's why you're doing it through the survey. So modifications in the questions. So I think Debbie and I talked about this when we talked about the survey that we put out. I'm not sure people knew what the intent was. We had an intention, but we didn't really tell anybody why we have you do this tiny little survey that came up on your ABRF app. That's important. Other things to look at, layout of the survey, asking multiple choice questions. I asked my cancer center community how they value their surveys. They send out a survey every year to every cancer center core. They do respond. Why? There's a financial obligation there, so they do respond. So find that line that connects you to your customer in one way. So that's actually what they told me. And they also told me that they have a small, after many years of us having a cancer center, they started adding a little comment box at the end, and that's where they get their best responses from. Feedback. We got very little feedback. Were we happy? No. I think the idea is to engage the customer more. You think you need to find other ways to engage them. So I said, there are some surveys that are for, done on a more monthly basis, on an annual basis, and also trying to assess when your customer is willing to respond to you most. I think this is coming to understand and engage with your customer base a lot more, however broad it is. Of course, there's one too many surveys that could be leading to survey fatigue, so have a thought about that. And when and how do you plan to provide this feedback, or making sure that the feedback is available to your customer base? The questions and the responses you're getting is important to you to grow, is important. I think if you just take a survey every year, fine, yeah, we're looking at it. I set it up to a management, they're looking at this stuff. The customer doesn't know. Customer needs to know why you're asking those questions and what you'll do with them. I think that's extremely important. That really means engaging your customer. So I stand as a proponent of, is the survey alone as a tool enough? My thought is that if you need more feedback that's more specific, more in-depth, consider combining your survey with another tool. Recently we did something, we called it an email survey. So customers were targeted and it was sent out as a survey. We'd love to talk to you, give us 5 minutes of your time. People will do it. I think it's making them feel that their response is important to what you're trying to do. As cores, we want them to be engaged with us. I think it's important to make sure that they feel that their responses are important to you. They're your stakeholders. If they weren't there, we wouldn't be here. So I think it's important to engage them at all points. And I think more so in the times that we are in right now, that engagement, that consistent behavior of engaging with them is going to be more valuable for your response rate. What happened? Okay. So I kind of moved towards customer engagement because I said so much about it. So develop an engagement strategy even before you start this process of asking them, hey, what do you think of this? Engage them. Let them know what you're trying to do. Whether it's user groups, whether you can educate them more about your services. It is communication, it's marketing, it's all of those. But if you don't do it, they don't hear about you, they don't know you, they just see a survey coming at the end of the year. And it's not as valuable for them to spend their time. So I think that's where I would leave you with. We need to be more engaged with our group. And I have a point here, incentivize. I did work with a survey organization a long time back, and I think they got the best responses when they incentivized, whether it's an hour of consultation time, whether it's an extra hour on your instrument time, whether it's a service that you provide and you can get their feedback on that, try that. And I think it helps in that engagement process, and they'll be more willing to do surveys, more willing to be a partner in your research. So that's it.
Can you elaborate a little bit on your email survey?
Oh, yes, we recently did that. We did an email survey, that's what we called it. And we sent it to some of our larger customers I think, in a couple of our cores. So it was a very specific targeted email. And that in particular, that email, that survey we did because we noticed a lot of our customers going outside of our cores. So from the financial databases, we collected information about customers going outside of University of Michigan, and looking at the value of services we lost, we decided to talk to those customers. So we did send them a survey, and we said, a survey is just an introductory kind of comment back to them saying, we understand that you are working outside of the system. Did you know we offer these services? Could you spend some time talking to us? Believe it or not, every single one of them was willing to have it.
So it was a one-on-one conversation?
It was a one-on-one conversation. Yeah, so I think if you follow the survey with an in-depth conversation, we also call them, exclusive conversations with a PI or a engaged VIP conversation, they tend to respond. I think it's important, as much as you value the money they spend with you, it's valuing what they bring to you. And I think that's what I would leave you with on those things. Open to any questions around this. I can tell you that we have not been very successful with surveys as yet, as well as Jeffrey has, and so we're still trying, we're still working on finding the best path to it. So this discussion is about what we're thinking through here. Okay.
I have a quick question, maybe for both of you.
Okay.
Have you ever tried, you talked about users of core facilities. What about polling the research community as a whole to find out, like our annual survey comes through the master list of faculty, and that's not run by me, but it's asking like, how aware are you of certain things? That kind of stuff. Like, is there a way in your survey, do you ever ask people, because you start with which core facility you're trying to review, but do you ever pull, maybe you're not a user yet, and then ask them some questions?
Yeah, actually, so the response is this on? Yeah. So I breezed through it pretty quickly.
It was so tiny. I was trying so hard and I couldn't read it.
That's a Qualtrics thing, actually. But the responses to how you use the cores, I used it myself. Someone in my lab used it. I tried to use it and was unable or didn't use it. Mm-hmm. And then there's a fourth response. So we definitely do that. And when we distribute the survey, as I mentioned, I combine a list of all the faculty with all of the users of the course and all of the graduate students, the lists of which I get from the different graduate programs, and then the listservs that we have around the course. And so I do send it to just about everybody I can possibly reach in an attempt to get to those people. And there are people who take the survey, don't review any cores, but provide comments or click the box that says, you know, I tried to use the core and I didn't. And they'll usually say, you know, either they couldn't serve my needs or it was too expensive or.
Do you use any of that to try to help engage new customers? Because that's for us, maybe my university is just too big in terms of mileage. To get new customers, that's always a thing. So do you use it as any sort of marketing, like, nope, don't even know what a core facility is, or,
Yes.
yep, I'm in the social sciences and I hear assays are important. I don't know, something like that.
I would if I saw comments that suggested that was an issue.
Okay.
I must say that's not something that shows up. I think those people just don't, they see, oh, core survey, not me, and they move
Got
on.
it.
We do that a little bit, especially when you're trying to bring on new technology and new equipment. And as I said, we review our external customers who are not coming to the core very often, and we do target them by introducing new products or new technologies that we do, and we do see an uptick in usage at that point.
We do independently send out, you know, reminders, here's the links to the cores, that sort of thing. In the medical school, our faculty affairs office sends me there's like a 2-page thing that each new faculty person fills out. And once they've gotten an offer, they send me a copy of that if they check the box that says they're going to do research, I get a copy of that and I send them a personalized email saying, welcome, here's a link to all the core facilities that we have available. Please, you know, let me know if you have any questions. So I do get to the new recruits that way.
Hey, thanks for this session. It's very interesting and useful. I'm quite aware I'm coming from an overseas perspective. I'm based in Singapore. But I wanted to ask the question about incentives of what you may or may not be allowed to do. When we do surveys, we have a lucky draw, a bit like you see in the exhibition hall, to try and encourage participation, and it works quite well. I don't know if that's allowed in the US context, and if you could comment on that.
We are allowed to do it up to a certain amount, that's all. It's a very small amount, but it's a way of offering, you know, a staff member can get up to a certain amount from a university, whether it's a gift or some kinds of incentives. So we sometimes do. Respond to the survey and you'll be thrown into a drawing. Because you're offering it to a group of people, yes, you do. We can offer something small. But I think mostly what we do is giving them a consultation that's free, or taking them through the facility, something like that has been more valuable, but we've tried both.
Okay, thanks. And is the same at Northwestern? Is it just that reminder approach that you outlined, or is there a
Yeah, no, that's it.
I've
honestly never thought of offering incentives. I think we're allowed to do that, again, up to a certain amount. It's actually really hard when you actually try and give them the gift, right? So it's like in the financial system, the machinations involved in giving somebody a $20 gift certificate are just unbelievably complicated. And so I gave up.
If it's anonymous as well, right? I'll detract some of that. The other point I wanted to make is a few things we've done is a post-service survey. So at the point of billing, which is maybe not the best time to ask, but we ask for a very short feedback of that. Yeah, exactly.
But you do it every single time. You do it every single time.
But they're involved at that point because they're in the system processing it. So we get a good response rate on that, whether it's skewed or not for debate. The other one is in some of our very kind of service-orientated facilities where there's kind of a sample collection or a pickup is those screens that you may see, they're happy or not, 1 to 5 scale, quick tap and you're gone. And that just gives that continuous feedback as to how things are going. So they've been good. And then user surveys in response to your emails and consultations and so on. Having a user committee has helped us as well for direct feedback to a specific call.
It's interesting. I get a couple of requests every year. I think some people know we built our own course management platform at Northwestern, and so we can tinker with it. And I get a couple of requests every year to do exactly that. And we've always said no because, you know, we worked very hard to make that platform smooth and not to irritate people when they use it. And I'm always afraid that if it pops up every time, they're just going to get annoyed.
Yeah, PPMS, sorry, last comment. PPMS does it as a happy or not, pops up every now and again when you log in randomly. But you're asking them about their current mood at that moment in time rather than anything to do with the facility. Which is...
Right, yeah. Don't attach it with the bill, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
So I just wanted to mention in terms of incentives, not for surveys, but we had a university-wide research resource expo, and as one of the incentives, we offered a lottery, 5 prizes of $1,000 each, and that was $1,000 they could use at any core of their choice using an account that was set up by our Office of Research Administration. So that's, one possible way, rather than going through the hoops of just giving a certificate to Amazon or something. So that's just an idea. One particular challenge that some cores at our university have is that they're not inward-facing, they're outward-facing. They are national centers for what they offer. And I'm wondering, would you send this type of survey out, or do you send out this type of survey if you have those similar type of cores?
If they used a core facility, they get the survey link. So you can take the survey either using your Northwestern credential or with an email address.
So if they're an outside user outside of the university, they still can answer the survey, correct?
They can. Hopefully they check the box that says I'm, an affiliate, or if there is a question in the survey that asks them how they're associated with. So I'm sorry, we didn't see it here because I logged in using my network credentials. But if you log in using an email address, it asks you what your affiliation to the university is.
Okay. And one final thing, for anybody that runs Cancer Center shared resources, one of the amusing feedback that I got for our survey is, why don't we use the same scale as NCI does? Ask them if the user would rate the core anywhere from excellent to outstanding to exceptional, which I thought was amusing, but somewhat maybe distracting. So just think about it. Thanks.
Isabel from UC Davis. So one of the things that we do to incentivize participation is broadcast the results. Not all of them, but we cherry pick a few that really highlight the core. We say, this core scored the highest in this. Here's a comment that really highlights how the staff are doing in this. It's part of our webpage. That really increased participation from year 1 to year 2. And just really highlighted that we were reading and paying attention to those surveys.
Yeah,
So
it's a great
that's a
idea.
tip.
Make people feel like you're using the data, yeah.
Yeah, so this is for George. You asked how you get the core-specific questions answered. So we, in addition to the broader survey that goes out from your office, in my imaging center, we have a survey, customer satisfaction, and this is transactional, really. Anyone that walks through our doors, we see human participants, we have study coordinators, we have PIs, we have all kinds of people walking through our doors each and every time. They need to find parking, they greet someone at the front desk, they interact with our technologists, they interact with our scientists and faculty, and so all of those interactions, we want to be able to capture them, and those are not really routinely captured like at the end of the year in a big survey, so we want to capture things in real time. So we have like a quarter of a page that we've designed, and we leave it at the front desk, we leave it in waiting rooms, we leave it everywhere, so that users can just pick it up and, were you satisfied with your visit? Did you have trouble parking? Did you have trouble parking? How was your reception at the front desk? Were we a welcoming environment? How did the technologists do? So it's just really no more than 6 questions. Some of them have like smiley faces, some have frowny faces, just to encourage participation. And then we collect that data. We have like a QR code, we have a link, we have, you can fill it out in real time and leave it at the front desk. You can take QR code and, complete it on the way out. We also have it self-stamped so that someone can walk out with it if they don't feel comfortable filling it out in real time. So every opportunity for them to give us feedback in real time regarding their visit, regarding their interactions with us. And then we use that just for our internal self-improvement efforts. And then there's the larger survey that comes from the dean's office. So I just thought I would mention that. It's really, really been helpful, and we find that people feel it out when they are happy, people feel it out when they are frustrated, so we get everything. We don't get a whole lot of in-betweens. We get happy customers, we get annoyed customers. That's kind of just the nature of surveys, but we found it really helpful.
I was just going to say real quick, I'm Alex Noble, I'm from the Salk Institute, so we're a lot smaller. We only have 10 cores, so I noticed all of you guys were using Qualtrics. We did look into that, but it was just way more than our needs or our budget allowed. So I just wanted to throw it out there that we on campus use Alchemer, which I've found very useful. If anybody has any questions or wants me to show them that or share my smaller institute survey with them, I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, actually. I mean, Qualtrics was cheap when I started using it, and it's now, it's AI enhanced, so we'll triple the cost. And we just had a very contentious negotiation with them about the cost of our campus license, and so it may not be in our future.
Yeah.
So I am always interested in new
Alchemer's
platforms.
a lot more affordable.
It is more complicated to set up, though, and you have to have a red cap running at your university. And we have that, and actually it was one of the things we tried early on. But it's good to know. The other point that I tried to make is that the analysis here just starts with the data, which is the important part of what we do. So it doesn't really matter which tool you use to capture that data, right? Like at the end, it's just a pile of data, and then you can really do the good work of extracting the information from it. We happen to use Qualtrics because we started there, or it met our needs at the time.
Yeah.
But I'd personally like to find an alternative.
Yes, I do really like Alchemer. It's very user-friendly and good reporting.
I make them ask you about that.
Can you spell that?
Yeah.
Alchemer, I think? Yes.
Oh, I would have spelled it when I was like.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I had one more thought about the feedback. We actually used a word cloud to great effect, to ridiculously impressive effect. We collected all those responses, free text responses, particularly about how our campus was under-resourced. And then the word cloud actually showed that high-performance computing or computing was a real concern. I put all the words that related to computing in red in a word cloud. And 2 years later, people still refer to that image, like the chancellor, vice chancellor. Oh yeah, remember, computing was the most important thing that we needed to invest in. So that, more than the graphs, more than the numbers, more than the counts, that image really stuck with them. Now, had I not color-coded them all in red for one theme that I really wanted to impress them with, I don't know what would have happened. But that word cloud worked better than the other 60 pages of that document. So I guess I'd say don't discount those.
Yeah, one graphic goes a long way in terms of sticking in people's minds.
Okay, well, if there's nobody else, wants to share their experiences, plans, or challenges, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, sure. Really good. My pleasure. Always happy to brag.
That sort of like just became conceptual many years ago. I had at some point suggested a survey research
Thank you.
that included folks that run survey